afternoon, everyone. This is another installment of Sobering Truths podcast, where we try to lower the reputation of alcohol in the court of public opinion. And I'm one of your hosts, Joyce Cook. Also with me is Bob Hester and Ira Stevens. Hello, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Hey,
Today we talk about alcohol a lot, and if anyone's been noticing, watching the news, there's this trend of people not drinking as much alcohol, but the problem with that is now they're turning to marijuana, and that's a problem. And we were going to talk about that a little bit. We've been researching, and there there are some scholarly articles about how marijuana is tied to schizophrenia, and I want to pull up a article about it and see what everybody thinks about that. This is from the National Library of Medicine, and it talks about the association between cannabis use and schizophrenia. And I just thought that was it's astounding. It
well, it
starts at
explains a lot of the problems that we see with people who have been using pot for quite a while.
yes,
Um, their personality changes and stuff. We've known this for years. We just haven't had the scholarly research articles to document it. But they've known this, golly, since the 70s and 80s about the behavioral changes. Of course, pot was so much weaker back then. You had to smoke a whole lot more of it.
right, exactly. Well, this says in the very first sentence there, it says marijuana is one of the most abused substances in the world. Marijuana is getting legalized around the world. And on down it says schizophrenia and cannabis seem to have a close relationship. And I could see that. You know how we always hear about the brain doesn't fully mature until 25, and a lot of young people are doing this. And so, what kind of effects are going on there in the brain with it not even being fully developed?
You know, as I was looking over one of these articles, not I was not surprised, but I noticed how similar, very very similar, were these issues to alcohol. You know, when they alcoholics, if they start, somebody starts drinking at an early age, they're far more likely to become an alcoholic. And so I noticed there was quite a bit of similarities between these two, marijuana and alcohol, and the effects they have on people, and when those effects start and that sort of thing.
Right. It on down in the article it says that nevertheless the fact remains that schizophrenia and psychosis walk hand in hand alongside with cannabis use. And that's just a little scary, and especially when people have our country has started to loosen the laws on cannabis and all the medical marijuana use. And I'm not opposed to medicine, but it just seems like it's gone too far almost.
Joyce, the fact is, the part that's medicinal, I can't say it, that used for medicine is separate from the part that messes with your mind.
Yes.
So you can use that part of it and still not use that part that it makes you high, which is basically what it is. But that's what people want to do. They want to use the whole thing. They want to make it legal because they want to get high. It's
Yes.
it's not a it's a sort of a ploy they're using to get it legal, is to use this. Well, it's good for medicine. Let's make it medically legal. But that is a cop out. You can use it for the medicinal purposes without use it for the THC or whatever part that is that makes you high. So it's kind of like the alcohol. Everything about it, it's pretty much deceptive for those people who try to or want to make it legal. They will twist the information to make it sound like it's a good thing and not a bad thing.
Right.
See, they've had medical marijuana for years. My daughter was on it briefly when she was in the hospital at UAMS to increase her appetite and to work with the nausea that she had when she was down there. It's called dronamidel. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to say it. Dronabinol, like the cannabinol of it. You can see how much I know about that. But anyway, it's called Marinol, and it's a synthetic pot basically with a lot of the elements out except for the THC and some of
Right.
the things. And so they've had that when they talked about, letting people smoke pot, which, I find amazing that they would, want to legalize smoking anything when we've essentially gotten smoking out of the culture, and we know smoking in every instance is bad for you. You take things into your lungs that are not supposed to be there, and it causes a problem. But anyway, they, to allow the medicinal marijuana, to smoke that. And when they had a medical marijuana called Marinol, and at one time it could only be used under direct doctor supervision, but I think the rules on that have been lessened. So much of this stuff is just it's lies, it's obfuscation, it's deception.
Sure.
What we allow people and what people want. The marijuana forces wanted this and they worked to get it. And when you understand that the pot industry brings in over somewhere around $40 billion, and that was in 2024, and that's, that they can calculate, that's not off the books. You can understand why all this is done. It's done for the exact same reason that the alcohol was done. It's money. If they can promote
Exactly.
this, if they can promote people using it, if they can give you any excuse to use it, money in their pockets.
And what they do, they play on people's lack of knowledge of the facts. But people don't look at it. They hear these things. It sounds good because they never research for themselves to find out what the real facts are. So these things just keep coming. It's like the alcohol; they keep coming, because people don't know just how bad it is. And alcohol, the situation with alcohol in America and actually the world, I guess, is a national crisis. And this is just substituting one crisis for another in a sense. If people go from alcohol to marijuana, it's I can't judge which is worse. I don't know if anybody knows which is worse or not. But it's not an improvement, I don't believe, to go from alcohol, people to stop drinking alcohol and start partaking of marijuana in its place. I just don't think that's a good thing, and that's basically what we're about. We don't want to lose our focus on alcohol, but we also want people to realize there's something else coming, that they're going to be try to convince the public that this is a good thing and that it's not that much harm to it. But based on this one article that y'all sent to me, there's a lot of harm to it. I learned quite a bit from this article, and I'm sure y'all are going to cover most of that. Quite a
Well,
bit
we've
after
we've
that.
done a huge amount of research. Many, 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 many articles, medical articles, and I thought, you say that this, that it's this coming. It's already here. They have already substituted pot for drinking. We have something in January called Dry January, where people, give up the bottle, give up drinking for a while. But one of the articles mentioned that now instead we have High January, so they're not drinking, they're smoking pot. People have this so many people have this urge to change their mental processes, change their mental status, to get away from reality. That's basically what it is.
Yes, it is.
And so, we've preached, and other groups have worked, and everybody knows the dangers of alcohol. Well, at one time, marijuana was supposed to be pretty gentle. It was supposed to be pretty neutral on physical problems. Now, of course, after 40 years of a lot of usage, we can see what those physical problems are. Pot is not, without its physical problems too. So we're just People just swap one for the other because apparently they can't handle reality
So
and
you're
they have
saying,
to get away from reality.
so you're saying that the results of pot through the years, even with the smaller amount of the harmful ingredient, we're seeing the effects of that, and now it's so many times more potent than it was then. So what would be, what can we expect in the future compared to what we've had in the past?
Well, I think have a lot of the same illnesses that we did with alcohol, and we'll have some new ones,
Well,
and we'll have some new problems.
yeah, I was talking about how the marijuana was so much less,
Stronger.
yeah, powerful then. It's much stronger now, and you said we've seen the effects of it, the results of it when it was not as powerful. But since it's so, and you can tell me, I've looked at it,
Well,
but
you can see right now what it's doing. 40% of fatal wrecks, victims in fatal wrecks, have elevated THC in their blood, and that comes from autopsies. The average blood level of 30.7, I think it's nanograms, or I don't know what the measurement is there. And that is what is average found in these fatal wrecks. Well, that's like a blood alcohol level of, like what is the 0.8? So it'd be like 1.2 or something. And so they're finding these high levels of THC or cannabis pot in these fatal alcohol rates. 40% of fatal wrecks now have elevated THC. That doesn't even account for the ones who are out there who are drinking and driving. And the thing about it is the established idea in a lot of states is that there is no level of THC in your blood level that is safe. And some counties, some states are saying that you can't have any more than 2 NGs. Some states 5 NGs, but there are a bunch of states that won't allow you to have any. They say any level is a problem with driving. And so that's one example of problems that we're already seeing with this elevated strength of pot and people using it.
and that's because we're seeing that maybe more than the other, because much more open because obvious you just like the DWIs, people are aware of those things. So this is something that's more public than some of the other problems, the schizophrenia and other things that result from it. Would that be a correct statement?
Yeah, I think so.
Well,
Joyce?
well, I was looking at this article. You know how the similarities between the alcohol, the money. That's the bottom line, and this. It says, however, now people also, no, that's not it. The number of people who believe that regular marijuana use can be harmful is decreasing. In 2007, 7% of the population aged 15 to 64 in the Americas reported using marijuana, which increased to 8.4 in 2017. I think that's partly from propaganda. It's just, I've heard people say it's just an herb, it's natural. Well, there's a,
So is arsenic.
what?
So is arsenic.
So is arsenic, and so is poison oak. Just because it's an herb doesn't mean it can't be harmful and that you should just do it willy nilly. And there's another article I read, and I'm going to pull it up here. Bill Bennett, he was the drug czar under
Reagan?
was it
Well,
Reagan?
no, but he was the drug czar under Bush at H.W.
Yeah,
Yeah, George
and
Right. He
Bush.
was
Yeah.
and he broke with Trump. He said he loves Trump, and I do too. And I don't agree with what Trump wants to loosen the marijuana. I guess the way it's
just
classified.
go from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under the federal drug laws. Let's see, what is it called? Federal Schedule 1 versus Schedule 3. So it would go from Federal 1, which is the highest, to Schedule 3.
Right.
It would still be illegal.
And there's now it's isn't there kind of a mishmash, the it may be legal in a certain state, and they have
Yeah,
problems
it's
because there's a federal law. But but
yes.
but yeah, I have to. I mean, I guess Trump is the way I read it was like he was wanting it to be there, make it
They're
looser for
wanting to
them.
study it for one thing,
Yeah,
to
study it
study
for
all of the
medical
uh-huh,
uses. And to
right.
me, it looks like they could carve out a niche for that, not just blanket, just make it available to everybody you know, and now it's
Well,
in gummies.
in the material that I've heard, I've heard him talk, and I've read a lot of that about that change in the laws, and he's basing it on the fact that so many states now are legalizing it for recreational use as well as medical. We don't have recreational use here in Arkansas, but there was an attempt a couple of years ago to get it passed for recreational. And he said that, he's looking at the statistics at certain percentages of people think that it ought to be, loosened up. It ought to be legal. And so I think he's trying to take, not make it legal, but, loosen up the maybe the federal guidelines for punishment. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
But that I think is the issue with him. He's working on public opinion. He's working on, what he's being told in his administration. So, and Trump doesn't do drugs. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. So this is not a personal thing with him.
Right. Do you remember that there was a documentary or movie or whatever it was called, Reefer Madness, back in the 50s,
Yeah.
and people
30s.
made fun
I
of
thought
that.
so.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it is a bad thing. Would you want a doctor working on you if he were high, or your airplane pilot flying you? And there's another article by, let me see, his name's Alex Berenson. I pulled that up, and he wrote a book 7 years ago about tell your children, and he warned about cannabis 7 years ago, and nobody wanted to listen about the harmful effects of it. But now, even if you go down the article, the New York Times walks back their stance on marijuana legalization, and I believe they said there's a crisis. Yeah, right there it says. On February 9th, the New York Times dropped its support for full cannabis legalization, writing that the United States has a, quote, marijuana problem. The paper admitted cannabis addiction and psychosis have become a crisis. And what has Bob been saying about the alcohol? That it's a crisis. So I just don't think it's good for our people to be high and stoned out and everybody going to oh, my back hurt. I mean, I'm not saying there's not legitimate problems, so I hope nobody thinks that. But
And there is a legitimate medical
Right.
marijuana, and it's
Yes.
called Marinol. So, there are potential solutions for some of those problems. I think a lot of this, there are so many problems with why this has gotten the reputation, why we have to legalize pot because whatever. And of course, libertarians have wanted pot legalized for years because they say, hey, look, if you're not bothering anybody else, why should anybody tell you that it's illegal to do something you want to do? I think 40% of the fatal wrecks having elevated levels of THC tells us why. But, the propaganda to me is what has been so terrible about pot because I remember it was really edgy. It was not actually in my high school. I mean, I'm sure it probably was, but it was not an issue until I got to college. And of course, it's grown ever since. And at first, it was a drug. People considered it a drug like anything else, and so there weren't many people trying to excuse the use or say, well, it's got different uses. It's an herb. Now of course the hippies did. It was always an herb,
right,
but there weren't the excuses. And then here within the last 20 years, there have been all sorts of excuses and reasons given why we should legalize it. It's for pain, it's for nausea. And yes, they do have other things that are for pain and nausea. And, one of the elements of pot is CBD, and that's used a lot. And it
Hmm.
doesn't have the THC in it. And I have used that once when I had some really bad stomach problems, and it was wonderful. So, the idea that it all boils down to people want to get high. I think that's the bottom line
I
on all of
agree.
this. People make every excuse possible and concoct every reason possible to make that happen. But that's as simple as it is. People want to get high.
Uh,
I agree, and that's exactly the same thing with alcohol. Two reasons. You want to get high, alcohol or marijuana, or you want to make money off of it, or both. It's a money making people for those who sell alcohol. Uh, Check into it. It's a money making business, and alcohol would be the same thing. There would be these people who would become millionaires from selling it, and then, at the same time, it's destroying our society, just like alcohol is right now.
Amen to that. I do think a lot of them just want to get high and they want to come up with all these excuses. And then I think that some of them have that medical marijuana card and they think, say if you go to hire on to a factory, you're working with machinery. Well, hey, if I own that factory, I'd say you can do whatever you want on your own time, but you can't work in my factory where you're a liability on my insurance. But I think they think that gives them the right to do that, or say drive big trucks. Are we going to have a whole nation full of people high? Are we going to have, a whole nation of people drinking? You know, uh, like you said, I think Ira said about the libertarian view. Um, it does harm other people. They're out on the highways. They can do whatever they want to in their own home, but I could say this till I'm blue in the face, but I don't know if some of these people really think about the consequences.
Well, I have issues with libertarians. I don't think they think things through real well. If God instituted laws, He instituted government, and what does government do? They have laws to do or not to do certain things, and that is what for? For the people's protection. And so, if you do away with all laws, some people say, well, when you put a law against this, that'll make you want to do it more. Okay, let's just do away with all laws, then nobody will do nothing, and nobody will do anything wrong. If they think it through, that's what it boils down to. You have to have laws, and responsible people have to make those laws. And just like John Adams, our second president, said, our Constitution is only good for a moral and religious people. And we're in a sad situation right now when all this is happening like this, people pushing it, and people have to understand, again, that's what we're about here today, have to understand how serious this is. Alcohol is a crisis right now in America. According to the article that Joyce just read, the marijuana situation is already at a crisis situation. So how much worse is it going to get? It'll get much worse if we don't do something about it. The people have to understand the facts and then decide that they want to do something about it to protect themselves and their families and their country.
I agree. And, in the Bible, what was it in Judges? They said everyone was doing as they saw fit, and that doesn't work out too well. I
And
was
we've seen a
also,
lot of that in various areas of the country. Right now, I've just been riveted to this problem in Minnesota where I see people, I don't even acting totally incomprehensibly, because they're fighting against the legal um, apprehension of criminal illegal aliens. And these people that are apparently citizens themselves have gone, they've rioted, they've tried to kill people, they've tried to stone, the ICE people. It's unbelievable to see how people respond to something like that when it's being done legally. It's a legal process, and when we go against things like that, any kind of alcohol, any kind of mind altering substance, exacerbates that. So I think we're already seeing the civil effects of loosening laws and like with marijuana and the explosion of alcohol and everything, we're already seeing the effects of that civilly.
Right, right.
Well, this, as you've shown through those articles, and I'm sure you have some more information there, but this marijuana, it affects brain health, gets you high and whatever, affects you anyway. It affects your lungs, your other health, but it affects your lungs. Uh, it's what's some other things? It causes a wide range of health effects on the body and the brain. So it's the the knowledge is out there that it does these things, yet people don't seem to be aware of it, or um, they're not paying attention to the right people. The right people are these people who have been, it's like the guy that wrote the book, sounding the bell about this. They need to be heard a lot more, and news media should be paying attention to those. I don't trust the media for much of anything, but these people who know about these things already and need to be heard loud and clear, because this thing is, again, a serious situation
In
already in America.
in that Alex Berenson article, he said the reason he thought they were kind of waking up and they're wanting his book now, the one he wrote 7 years ago, is that they're seeing their family, their child, their
Right.
cousin, husband, whatever, uh, have to deal with all this. And people, it doesn't seem like they do not have the capacity to think very far ahead on these things. They just don't.
I agree. That's exactly, that's saying it a better way than I just got through trying to say it. But we've got to. It's sad that it has to get to the point where your family is being destroyed before you realize you need to do something, and that's kind of where we're at.
There's another article that I found. It says changes in self-reported cannabis use in the United States from 1979 to 2022 by Jonathan B. Calkins. Um, it says the conclusions at the bottom there. It starts talking about long-term trends in cannabis use in the United States parallel corresponding changes in cannabis policy with declines during periods of greater restriction and growth during periods of policy liberalization. So that proves that harder, uh, the tighter restrictions help stop so much of this. So, I mean, I'm for stricter laws. If they want to use it for legitimate medical use, but someone said that they took somebody to the store and they passed by that place, one of the medical marijuana places the other day, and there were just people, all kinds of people out there, just a crowd, waiting to get their marijuana. Now, I just don't think that many people have back trouble.
I don't think they have that much back problem that marijuana, that getting high would cure, and now whether they get high at those places like that, y'all tell me about this. Those places like that already exist, it's for medical. Do do the people get it to get high? I mean, is it still got
It's a
the?
store.
It's
It's
a
like the one that's
it's
called
still
Crop is down there on Southwest, not Southwest, Craighead Road, oh, shoot, um, Caraway Road. And if they have a medical card, they can go in there and select products like gummies or, I guess I've never seen anybody select the pot to smoke, but I'm sure that they can. But there are different products in there that have CBD or THC, pot. And that's what they do. They could submit their marijuana card and pay for their products that they want and then leave with them.
do those products contain the part that gets you high?
Yes, they're
Okay,
they're pot
right.
in
The
different ways. There's
THC.
I thought I
gummies,
knew the answer to that, but I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah.
gummy edibles, all
Yes.
sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
The CBD is the part that doesn't get you high. The THC is the
Okay.
one that gets you
Correct.
high.
Yeah,
So,
correct.
and
I used
go ahead.
I used to buy, believe it or not, I used to buy CBD for a dog that I had that was very important to me. He developed cancer, and I bought CBD for him for the pain, and it helped him out, until we lost him. So CBD though doesn't, have you don't you don't have the high that you have with THC because it doesn't contain THC.
Right.
I wrote a letter to the
It's been
editor.
good for a lot of things though. CBD has. Excuse me.
I wrote a letter to the editor several years ago about this very fact that I don't know if it was in response to somebody else's letter or whatever. The fact that you could get the part that does not make you high for you, that for the medical part, and you don't have to have the other part. That was several years ago that I wrote that and researched it and found out that that was a fact.
Bob, I think this was the article you might have been referring to, how cannabis can affect your health. And see where it says, while approximately 3 in 10 persons who report cannabis have a cannabis use disorder, this figure is rising. And that's scary right there. It says some signs and symptoms of cannabis use disorder include trying but failing to quit using cannabis or giving up important activities with friends and family in favor of using cannabis. So people that say that, oh, you can't get addicted to that, yes, you can. And
Yes.
we've all heard that this crop of cannabis is much more than we talked about that earlier, Iris. You did than years ago during the 60s, 70s, or whatever. But and you never know what kind of chemicals are in it. They talk about it being, an herb. It's healthy. I've heard people say that, but what about the chemicals they spray on it? What I mean,
Well,
the same person that would smoke a joint, they don't want to have any cigarettes around. So what's the difference? You're still introducing smoke that can cause cancer into your lungs.
Can I read this the part about the percentage? Products from dispensaries often offer much higher concentrations than, well, let's start up here. In a study of cannabis research samples over time, the average delta A-9 THC, the main form of the THC in cannabis plant, concentration almost doubled from 9% in 2008 to 17% in 2017. But here's even worse. Products from dispensaries often offer much higher concentrations than seen in this study. In a study of products available in online dispensaries in 3 states with legal non-medical adult cannabis use, the average THC concentration was 22% with a range of 0 to 45%, which means it could go as high as 45%. That is scary.
It
That is
is.
scary.
It is very scary. I'm worried that people are going to be your medical people and they're doing it. It's really scary, and people in driving just regular cars, but big trucks or airplanes even. That's really
in
scary to think about.
any area that people would be drinking in is going to be an area that people would be possibly using pot and even other drugs. So, to think that only some people, use pot and it's only the guy that's, 27 and smoking pot and playing video games in his parents' basement, that affects is not so. You got people walking everyday lives, and if there's not any kind of drug check, for their job, it's entirely possible that they are. We don't know who's using it. It's weak. We can tell it's already widely used, just like alcohol is. The problem is pot is still illegal in most states. It's illegal federally, so those states who have legalized it for like recreational use, there's an interesting legal line between them and the federal government. So, but it's pretty widely into culture now. It's
Right,
lost its you know tag of being a hippie drug and things like that. It's out in the culture.
right.
I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but I didn't do any research on it, but I've heard that some of these states, which is it, Colorado, some of those have regretted legalizing it. Did y'all have any information on that?
Iris
The
did.
Yes, the Colorado governor, and I saw this several years ago when Colorado was one of the first states that legalized it recreationally, just opened the doors. And at that point, and I read this in an article, that the governor of California had said that it was the worst thing they had ever done. They had plenty of people coming to Colorado now, but it wasn't for jobs. It wasn't for, legitimate things. It was to smoke pot. And that's when their homeless problems started in and a lot of those problems. So they've seen what legalizing it does. It's just that they turn their heads for one reason, and it's because of the money.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep. So, folks, the evidence is out there from what you just said. Uh, we need to oppose this in every way we can, any kind of legalization effort.
We do, and we just want to try to raise awareness. And we could probably go on, but we will come back later and do more research and let you know what's going on. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Does that tune have a name?
I don't think so.